Hello, hello. Have you ever heard about the richest man that ever lived in the 13th century? He was an African king. If you have, then of course you would know that I am speaking about the great Mansa Musa of the Mali Empire. Tune in if you're willing to hear a story about him, because it is fascinating. It was for me. Mansa Musa was not an ordinary king. He was the richest. I shall repeat it again, because this is the main thing about him in this story. How he loved to flex his gold and his riches all over the continent of Africa, especially in Cairo. But this ruler of Mali was given the title Mansa in 1312 after his brother, the ninth Massa of Mali, which was called Abu Bakr II, decided to just take a little trip across the Atlantic Ocean to see what was beyond the oceans. His brother never came back, and so Musa decided to take the throne. And was that the best thing that ever happened for the Mali Empire? So Musa's rule came at a time when the European nations in the 13th century were struggling with raging civil wars, starvation, diseases, and a lack of resources. Mali, however, was a prospering nation, especially under Mansa Musa's rule. He expanded the empire, right? And he also brought in great knowledge from other parts of the continent and built great temples and universities in the land of Timbuktu and some parts of Sahara Desert. He was phenomenal, and the people loved him. When Mansa became king, the economic standing of the citizens changed for the better. Mali was actually a Muslim, an Islamic country, and it flourished due to the gold and salt that they sold, they traded. The world lacked in these resources back then when Mali was full of it, especially gold. It wasn't until 1324 that the world got a glimpse of Mansa Musa's wealth and what Mali had. Oh Lord, what Mali had you could not find in any other empire. Mali is known to be the largest empire of the African continent in the 13th century. It came second after the Mongolian Empire. At the time, the Mongolian Empire was the largest. So, being the devoted Muslim that Mansa Musa was, and scholar, he took a trip to Mecca. And my oh my, did he make a phenomenal scene, an unforgettable moment at Cairo, located in Egypt. Mansa Musa showed the world what he was made of. Literally gold. As King Mansa Musa set out on his journey to Mecca for his Hajj pilgrimage, he didn't travel alone. The voyage, which spanned on an estimate of 4,000 miles, was traveled by Musa and a caravan that included tens of thousands of soldiers, slaves, and heralds draped in Persian silks and carrying golden staffs. Damn. Imagine seeing a slave in Persian silks. Although records of the exact number of people who participated in the voyage are scarce, the elaborate convoy that accompanied Musa's march alongside camels and horses carrying hundreds of pounds of gold. Damn, imagine if you saw this guy walking towards you. This man, this king had everything a country and a leader would ever want. So I asked, imagine if you saw Mansa Musa walking past your neighborhood. Yes, people of territories that Mansa Musa was passing saw his enormous wealth and the Malian people dressed in all sorts of luxury fabrics that they could never afford. These people look like they were walking out of heaven, right? The impact the Malian Empire left on the Egyptian people after he visited Cairo would reverberate for more than a decade, right? More than a decade. So finally, he arrives in Cairo after 4,000 miles. What took place there? Mansa Musa, out of generosity, destroyed the economy. So arriving in Cairo, Mansa Musa did make a scene. And he caused trouble. Him and the Sultan met face to face, and the Sultan, out of ego and insecurity, demanded that Mansa Musa, a king himself, the wealthiest in the continent, to go on the floor and kiss it, and kiss his hand. We're talking about the Sultan of Egypt. Mansa Musa declined, and he said, I'll give you gold instead. This is something that Egypt actually wouldn't mind having. Mansa Musa offered enormous amount, so much the Sultan was happy to accept and allow the Malians and the king to enter the city of Cairo. So one thing we know about Mansa Musa is that he is a very generous king. His slaves are wearing Persian silks and luxury items for... Don't you see? This guy does not look down on anyone, and he's always willing to give a helping hand. Mansa Musa came into the city with the Malians. The Malians did not know at the time that they were extremely wealthy compared to the people of Egypt. They were dressed in gold. They had so much, but because they wanted to purchase some items that they didn't have back in Mali, they paid a lot of gold for it, since the vendors raised up their prices. King Musa, he decided to give out some gold as well to a couple of people who needed it. Let's call it like charity. He gave charity, but he did a little bit too much, and the value of gold in Egypt decreased, and this caused problem for 12 years in Egypt. The city was littered with gold, too much, that the Egyptian dollar and the economy crashed. Boy oh boy, Mansa Musa did not see this coming. To be honest, I think he just didn't know how wealthy he was. he didn't understand. He was just being kind. But the king's trip wasn't all about giving away gold. On his voyage, on his way to Mecca, he acquired the territory of Guo within the Songhai Empire, the Songhai Kingdom, my apologies, extending his territory to the southern edge of the Sahara Desert along the Niger River. He would go on to have an empire that spanned several territories, including current-day Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Nigeria, Chad, and Mauritania. I hope I pronounced that right. In addition to Mali. Now you see why the Malian Empire was so large. So, what were Mansa Musa's ambitions? What is he really known for other than just being wealthy and swimming in a pool of gold, living in a kingdom made out of gold? What else was there about him that made him great? Other than changing the economic status of his people, and the lifestyle of his people became so amazing. They were wearing golden Persian silks. Gao became a very special place for Mansa Musa. Here he would build several mosques after completing his Hajj pilgrimage, right? And Timbuktu was also a very, very important place for him. Timbuktu is actually a really well-known historical site right now. It was said to be a place paved, the roads were paved with gold, and it was super wealthy because Mansa Musa invested his wealth into that country. Into that place, Timbuktu. And he built schools, universities, libraries, and even mosques there. Whatever knowledge that he got from his journeys across the continent of Africa, he will bring it back to the Malian Empire in these different places and put them in universities, in books and scrolls. The Islamic people were scholars, and Mansa Musa loved knowledge. Of course, Mansa Musa, being the man that he is, including being the richest in the world, literally the richest, his fame grew beyond the seas, maybe further than wherever his brother went. Abu Barak the second, sorry. Yes, so words of Mansa Musa's wealth and influence only spread beyond Africa after his voyage to Mecca, and it also spread to places like Europe and the Middle East, wherever. Tales of his enormous convoy and generosity continue to be passed on long after his death, which is believed to have taken place between 1332 and 1337. I believe he was really young when he died. So the Mali Empire lost a great king, a very great king. But the Malian Empire still continued to flourish after 3 or 4 centuries later. Maybe it did not flourish as great as how it did in Mansa Musa's time, but it still flourished. I believe his son took over after him, and the Songhai Empire, when it gained its independence, grew very, very powerful. And they conquered the Malian Empire, they conquered Timbuktu, and it is heard today that all these beautiful places and university that Mansa Musa invested his time, his passion, his love, and his wealth in was invaded, and it was stolen, and a lot of sad endings happened. So, have we failed in recording the history of Mansa Musa? I told you, this man is influential and he was the big thing back then, okay? Of course they made records of him and the stories are well known. How can you not know about Mansa Musa? By the late 14th century, Musa had been drawn in the 1375 Castilian Atlas by an important resource for navigators of the medieval Europe, created by a Spanish cartographer. His name is Abraham Crisque, I believe that's how his last name is pronounced. The atlas depicted Musa sitting on a throne with a gold spectre and crown, holding a gold nugget. So there are pictures of this image that they made of him. That is how influential and great this man was. The whole world wanted what he had. So yeah. Quoted by Rodolphe Ware of University of Michigan, he said, "Imagine as much gold as you think a human being could possess and double it. Double it. That's what all the accounts are trying to communicate. This is the richest guy anyone has ever seen. The richest and probably the only one, because he had never-ending gold, and he gave them out like they were McDonald's chicken nuggets. He gave them out like a candy to a kid. It was just gold. It's nothing much." So after hearing the great tale of Mansa Musa, do you think that you have your Mansa Musa spirit? What is a Mansa Musa spirit? Kindness, generosity, knowledgeable, and I guess wealthy. This was a man that was known to spread knowledge, to serve his God, his people, and to fulfill his purpose as the Mansa of Mali. I'm sorry if I didn't make it clear. Mansa means king. Do you have your king spirit, a leader? If you do, congrats. I'm very proud of you, and you are one of a kind. Let's be great like the great Mansa Musa of the Mali Empire, and let's honor his story, because he did do some great works and he contributed to modern knowledge that we have today. That's the end of this tale. I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, bye.